Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, the listener. Thanks to all of you, including Vince Power, Chris Beneteau, Jeffrey Zilks, and everybody. Welcome our brand new patron, Ralph.
Yay! Welcome, Ralph.
On this episode of DTNS, if you've played Pokemon Go or Ingress, you helped make a 3D AI model of the world. Plus, Amazon has new Echo shows, and the PlayStation Portal can now access the cloud. About time. This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
Here in Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
Here in my room, I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
I am also in a room.
Is your room outside of time or something?
It's its own, it's like the Vatican, right? It's like its own.
Yeah, it's its own state.
Yeah.
The
If
Chang
you watch
states.
this episode 20 years later, it will be out of time.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So I hope everybody enjoyed the experiments yesterday. If you didn't catch them, we had different DTNSs and GDIs. So go check the Patreon for the GDI or YouTube or Twitch. And thanks to everybody who's let us know what they think. Keep the feedback coming. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Let's start with the quick hits.
Google announced it's taking steps to address what it calls parasite SEO, where lower quality websites use tactics to get better search rankings. The Verge gives examples like a news blog that publishes online shopping coupon codes in a hidden part of its website, or an educational site that publishes unrelated affiliate marketing content. Google wants the changes to give higher rankings to genuine content and reduce the visibility of those parasites.
404 Media obtained leaked documents that show that GrayKey, a forensic tool from Grayshift, can give partial access to iPhones, actually full access to the iPhone 11, but partial access to iPhone 12 through the current model, iPhone 16, if it's running iOS 18 or 18.01. It also can give access to some Android models. This tool bypasses security features and encryption, so law enforcement retrieves it, uses it to retrieve data during criminal investigations. It does not appear to be able to access phones running any of the current iOS betas.
Rest of World notes that survey results from the Global System for Mobile Communications Association Intelligence, also known as GSMA, find that 57% of the world's population is connected to the mobile internet. But the number is slowing a bit. From 2015 through 2021, the number was consistently around 200 million new users, but that dropped to 160 million over the last 2 years. Doesn't seem to be a coverage problem. Only 4% of the global population lives in areas that is not covered by a mobile broadband network. The International Telecommunication Union points out that the cost is likely a factor. Cost of, just having access or having a phone or something like that. While the cost of access is declining overall, data in Africa is more than twice of what that is in the Americas, and the Americas are the second most expensive region.
Microsoft's following up on its constant promise that everything you look at is an Xbox by expanding Xbox Cloud Gaming to include 50 games that are owned by Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers. So if you own Baldur's Gate 3, Hogwarts Legacy, and the like, you'll be able to play them through Xbox Cloud Gaming. This is part of a broader rollout to let players stream thousands of Xbox titles that they already own. That's the whole idea of bringing Xbox everywhere. TVs, PCs, mobile devices, they're all designed to take advantage of the feature, which is set to extend to consoles and the Xbox app in 2025. Microsoft's delayed Project Lapland is supposed to overcome some of the technical challenges like game updates and save file syncing.
The U.S. has awarded Global Foundries $1.5 billion to expand its semiconductor production under the CHIPS and Science Act. This funding will support building of a new facility in Malta, in the state of New York, and upgrading operations in the state of Vermont, potentially creating 1,500 manufacturing and 9,000 construction jobs over the nearest decade. The chips are expected to strengthen national security, be integral in automotive and defense industries, for example. It's also part of a broader $39 billion government program to strengthen domestic chip supply chains and reduce reliance on foreign production. All right, everybody, let's talk about whether or not we want to mount a smart home device on our wall.
Okay.
shall we?
I didn't. I got the Amazon Echo Show 15 a couple of years back, but I bought the stand. I didn't mount it on the wall.
All right, so Amazon introduced the Echo Show 21. $400. It's a smart display with a 21-inch 1080p screen, hence the name Echo Show 21. The company also announced an upgraded Echo Show 15 for $300. The Echo Show 15 debuted back in 2022, so Amazon is, kind of doubling down on that, but also introducing a model that's significantly larger. Both models have improved audio quality, more bass, noise reduction, stuff like that, a better camera, 65% zoom, auto framing, support for Wi-Fi 6E. But what I think Amazon's going for here with the Echo Show 21 is essentially a mounted TV. Not a large TV. I mean, 21 inches, that's a small TV. But if you've got something that works for you, for anybody who has an Echo Show, and I do have one. It's, a little long in the tooth at this point. I think it's the 10. It really does come in handy. I don't have it mounted. It's very small, so it sits in a corner of my kitchen. But Scott, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the whole thing? Because we've got rumors of Apple coming out with a device much smaller than this. That's the rumor mill anyway. But the idea of having almost like a Google Nest, where it's like you put it in the right place and it does things for you.
Yeah, it's so funny to say that 21 inch isn't very big, and I'm immediately brought back to the mid 90s when I was trying to get anything larger than a 19 on my CRTs, and they were so expensive.
I mean, it's not big, if you think of it as a television, right?
Yeah, as today's standards
it is big
go.
as a display.
Yeah. Even as a computer display, it's already kind of not big enough for most people, right? So it is a little bit small, but also this kind of device and the kind of multi-use purpose of it probably needs to be something in the range that it is, about a 20 or 21 inch device. I'm trying to think how I would use it. And unfortunately, I think I would continue to use it the way I already use my old show. I've got one of the old, little 4-inch ones. It's pretty ancient, but it still does everything I bought it for, which was me yelling at it, telling it to do things, set off certain lights, that sort of stuff, and it responding and doing that, sometimes playing music, what have you. I've never used it once, given its small form factor, for any kind of video watching. So this would probably get some more of that play.
You've never watched it, or you've never used it to watch video? Yeah,
it's too small because the thing's like I say, it's maybe 5.5 inch. I don't remember what that model was called. It's old.
The 5.
Yeah, probably the 5.
Yeah,
because they're doing this all based on measurements, I guess.
Yep.
But I haven't been in the market to kind of upgrade it in a while because in terms of use case, I think mine's a little more limited. The kitchen's really literally adjacent to a room with a 4K TV that's right there. So if I'm going to do TV, I'm going to do that way.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I remember thinking having a TV in the kitchen was the single coolest thing you could do. And so there's a part of my life where this would have been a no-brainer, and I would go for it.
Those TVs that used to be mounted under the kitchen cabinets, I was so jealous.
Yeah, those were always your friends you thought had all the money in the world.
You could just watch TV in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
We have a 5, and we barely ever watch video on it. I can't remember the last time we watched video on it. We ended up moving it. We used to have it in the kitchen, but we moved it into the bathroom and shut off the camera. It has a sliding thing to shut off the camera, but we use it for weather and music and stuff like that. The 15 that we have, we use for TV every so often, but it feels like a secondary feature. It feels like this is really meant to be a smart home hub. They want you to mount it on the wall in a central area where you can use it to look at the weather and control your smart home and see somebody using your Ring doorbell and maybe play some TV too, right? It's all those things. Certainly a 21-inch version is lending itself more to more video uses. So I kind of think Amazon is you could use it as a Fire TV, but they seem to be pitching it mostly as a smart home hub and kind of a cool looking one that can do lots of other things too. And that's why they're improving the audio, because they know you're going to play music off of it too. Just something to serve that central area with anything you need.
Yeah. And I think that's where Amazon is, trying to sort of up its game. when you say like, oh, check the weather and, just kind of, check your rings, that sort of thing. A lot of people would be like, I don't need to like buy this device, put it on my wall somewhere. But you also have, and it doesn't have to be in the kitchen either, but for example, mine is in the kitchen, and I've got my carousel, which, you can customize, set to like send me just like various recipes based on what I have told Amazon to put on my shopping list in the past. And so I will get these recipes where I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, save that. There are a lot of things that I think just as far as lifestyle stuff goes, that it can be helpful for. Obviously, Amazon is not the only.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, Amazon's not the only, only company in this game. But I do think that the Echo Show it's a great little product. I use it all the time.
Yeah, we use it for photos, which is another one where the 21-inch would, be even better with that big screen. Yeah. Let's go on to Sony issuing a system update for the PlayStation Portal that lets it do what a lot of people wanted it to do when it first launched: play games from the cloud. The Portal could only stream games over Wi-Fi from your PS5, but now it can connect to the PlayStation Plus game catalog and play PS5 titles. So it's still somewhat limited. You're going to need a PlayStation Plus premium subscription. That seems obvious. And Sony recommends you have a 7 megabit per second connection if you want to do 720p, or a 13 megabit per second for 1080p. I feel like most of the serious games probably have that, if not more. It's a beta. That's why it's only PS5 games for now, and you're not getting some of the other features you would get from cloud gaming. No game trials, party voice, chat, 3D audio, no in-game commerce, few other things, at least for now. But Scott, I heard the sound of many PS5 and Portal using gamers cry out in victory when they announced this.
I think so. I mean, like you said, I think people wanted it at the start, but this thing sold well. It isn't like it got dinged for not having this functionality. It was really hard to get at first. They were selling like hotcakes. I ended up getting one, basically the second run that they did. And quick props for the device itself. What it was designed for then worked really well, like extremely well, maybe even shockingly well. I didn't expect Wi-Fi performance to be as good as it was for that device. So that bode well, but there was always this feeling of like, this is weird. I'm remote controlling this from a device that's on the other part of the house. And without that device, this thing is a brick. It doesn't do anything for anyone except that one function. And that starts to make you question your purchasing decisions and what's worth what money and that sort of thing. This adds a whole nother level of value to it. I hope and would assume that we can expect the similar performance in terms of latency out of their cloud gaming. They will be using Microsoft's backend, so similar results is what we're hoping for there that we get with Game Pass. And suddenly that device is a lot more lucrative. I think it's totally worth owning one now. Whether or not it will be all the titles everybody wants and the extensiveness of what's available on the platform, that's a big question. But I do think this will help Sony drive more subs, which right now they're lacking in, at least compared to the competition. So all of this is good, even if I believe in my heart of hearts they should have had it at launch.
I feel like this increases their revenue per user, right?
Yeah.
It says to existing PlayStation gamers, hey, here's a new way to take the best advantage of the games you love in the PlayStation 5 universe, which is actually what the proposition was at launch. You've got PS5 games, play them on this. Don't go buy a Steam Deck. You can't play your PS5 games on the Steam Deck, not without a lot of hackery. So do it this way. You'll only pay $200. Now they're saying, okay, you can play your own games. What if you want to play your cloud games? Games that you don't actually own but are available in the cloud. Here, we'll make that available too. But it really is also still just appealing to PS5 users. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good business move. It's going to help them. But when you look at the landscape and you see what Microsoft is doing, what we just talked about in the quick hits about, making Xbox everywhere. And the joke was in Penny Arcade this morning about, looking at a walrus with tusks and being like, that doesn't look like an Xbox to me. Because Microsoft's doing all those ads. They're like, this is an Xbox. This is an Xbox.
Sure.
But that plan means everybody can subscribe to the Microsoft service no matter what device they have. This still locks you in this is not expanding the PlayStation universe. And I feel like they also need to do something that does that. And this, I'm not saying this has to do that, but I look at this and it reminds me like, they don't have a portable game solution for people to bring people into the PlayStation universe.
Yeah, and there's also just this feeling that it would be nice to have these games native on the device if you had an option to download them. Think of it as like Netflix. I can stream it, but I can also, for this flight, I can pre-download a movie. That kind of functionality is still what we would prefer on devices like this. But when it comes to somebody who knows what they're getting into, I'm getting this to stream video games over the internet and get a pretty good experience out of that. I think this is going to be fine. It is a big, generous display, a beautiful one at that. It's not OLED, but it's good. And if you're really in that Sony ecosystem, which you're absolutely right. They've got one foot. They have stepped out kind of hard on this one foot and said, look what we're willing to do. But their other foot is firmly placed in PlayStation land. Yeah. And it's hard. They do not want to let go of that.
Anyone who's played Twister knows this can be an untenable position if held too long.
Absolutely. You can't hold it for that long. But I do think this is a step in the right direction, and it is good certainly for Sony players. So we'll see what happens when they implement it. I don't know if they gave a timeline, but I assume they'll roll it out, like they do anything else. You'll get it eventually, and you'll give it a shot. Yeah.
If you have feedback about anything that gets brought up on the show, there's lots of ways to get in touch with us. One of us is the old social networks. We are at DTNS Show on X. We are at DTNS Show at mstdn.social on Mastodon. We're at Daily Tech News Show on TikTok. And DTNS Pix, DTNS PIX on Instagram and Threads.
Niantic, the maker of Pokémon Go and Ingress mobile games, announced it's building a large geospatial model, AI model, sometimes known as an LGM, to let computers perceive and understand physical spaces, but also interact with them in new ways, forming a critical component of AR glasses and fields beyond. That's in Niantic's words. LGMs are analogous to LLMs for text, but trained on billions of geolocated images from around the world collected from millions of Pokemon Go players, because there are millions of them. So, Scott, we now have AI perhaps directing the future of games, but along with AI models in general computing, if games are doubling as training data collectors, what does that say about the information we get back, and what do we do with it?
It's interesting. We don't know exactly, and they don't either. They're very optimistic about the fact that they now have the data. We have technology in the form of these models to like parse it and use it and compile it and figure out what to do with it. But I'm not sure ultimately they really even know. This feels a little bit, it's funny because I always thought that we would get here with this amount of data through just the sheer fact that everybody's got a device in their pocket now that takes decent photographs. And I thought that somehow would do it. Projects in the past, I remember Microsoft had a project at one time where everybody's photos in a certain place, let's say in France, right around the Eiffel Tower, were being stitched together to make one whole image. And it was like this big whoop at the time. This is exponentially larger than that, but coming from such a weird source. It's not just that everybody's got a camera, it's that they willingly held them up and had an AR experience where a fake little, monkey monster sat out 20 feet from them and they threw a fake ball at it. But you're filming in the park. You've got these trees in this area, in this building, and this whatever. So you have this geolocation visual data. Well, what do you do with that? And the answer is, well, now that we have these AI models, you start to use it in the models. Ultimately, I don't know what the final use case is. But it does seem interesting, right? It seems like we just don't know yet. It will crop up and somebody one day will go, oh, you know what? All this data that Niantic has, we could probably buy some of that, and that'll fill out what we need for this or this. I think that's how this is going to pan out. It's almost like this is worth doing just because it's worth doing. You have the data. We have the technology. Just go ahead and do it, and then let's see what use cases maybe arise. They seem very excited. I like how Tom put it earlier. They kind of have get the data, put it in the model, profit, right?
Step 3,
but we don't
profit.
know what. But we don't know what step 3 looks like at all.
Yeah.
What
was the step before step 3?
And that's a step that's very hard to describe, and they don't even really know how to describe it. But you're going to start seeing this with all sorts of stuff. And you already see it with platforms where Meta and X and everybody else is, either asking you for or brute forcing a way to scan and use your data. And they're not talking about just the stuff you posted today. They're talking about stuff you posted in 2007. And in the Niantic's case, they're talking about visual data and geolocation data from 2016, 2015, like old stuff.
I mean, I was very into Pokemon Go in 2016. That was, you would know a lot of things about me based on my usage, at the time.
Yeah. Once again, it's another one of those things where some people are going to see this as invasive or go, wait a minute, my house is in a whole bunch of those photos because right out in my street is a Pokestop. So everybody's there all the time and they're always facing my house because apparently the Pokestop faces out and this sort of stuff. Like there are questions. I have a lot of questions about that and how some of that data gets used, not just safely, but with proper permission where needed. Like we're still faced with all the same ethical questions around that we have around a lot of questions around AI, LLMs, art generation, this kind of thing. But in this particular case, it's more about who's going to use it and who they would sell it to, I suppose. So I don't know. I haven't thought too doom and gloom about it yet. I just think the data itself is super interesting. And so my hope is that it can be used for good and not evil.
I mean, anything that is based on the actual, map of the world, which something like Pokemon Go is. That I can only imagine that, lots of companies would be clamoring for that information.
Well, not only that, but it's funny. It's almost like it's a sandwich effect here, a pylon, because the data that Pokemon Go relies on to have their game work in the first place is geolocation data that 25, 30 years ago wasn't even possible. We're using, mostly Google stuff, but we're using satellite imagery and we're using map data that we never had prior to this. And so we're already...
Shout out to the Ingress players who are shouting right now, like, we were the ones who created that map for Pokemon Go. And their data is part of this too, actually.
That's a really good point, because the Ingress data, literally some of the Pokestops and the Ingress stops, whatever their equivalent was, are identical. They didn't change it.
At the beginning, for sure. Yeah.
In the beginning, for sure, yeah. In my neighborhood, some of them are still the exact same places. So you have a kind of a complicated thing. It's not like we suddenly have this data out of nothing. We've been building on it for a while, and it's on the shoulders of map data, on the shoulders of satellite imagery, on the shoulders of other technologies. So at the end of it all, what does that mean? Who owns it? What privacy concerns are there? Like, these are all questions that will probably have to be addressed. But of course they're going to do this. And I think this is going to be true of any kind of large data set. Everyone's eyeballing them going, well, what if we plug that into blah and we did model blah, and pretty soon you're doing all kinds of blah, I think we'll maybe making money out of it.
And then I know a lot of people would be like, well, I want to opt out of this. I mean, if the data is anonymized, then, you still should be able to opt out. That I think that, that's a choice. Some people just say, nope, don't want to be part of the machine. But if you're, nobody's going to be like, well, Niantic said that you live here at this house, Sarah, and so somebody's going to come knocking on your door, asking you for money. It's sort of like, what's the worst case scenario here? But for folks that feel just kind of wary of this in general, I think that this is yet another example of this is going to happen. And companies are going to have to figure out how to explain that to their users, and also offer users a way to be like, I don't want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought what was interesting about the videos that I saw explaining this is that they're using the multiple views of, say, like a statue in a park, to be able to map parts of the world that you cannot get to with a vehicle. You can't put a Google Map street view thing in there. It's probably not even practical
driving a car into that
to send backpackers in or anything, because you're getting thousands of views of this. Then to Scott's point about the Eiffel Tower, you can stitch them together and make a very highly accurate 3D model. And what that's going to be useful for is augmented reality. Now, that's the blank step 2, is like, what is augmented reality going to be? But the ability to say, we can with extreme precision put a virtual object on top of that statue or hanging around its neck or anything is what's going to be valuable about this data. So it's, to me, this is less of a privacy issue than many other situations, because this is all public arena stuff and it's mapping that at a highly precise way. And I think it's worth pointing out they're receiving about 1 million fresh scans each week, because Pokemon Horizons has made Pokemon Go more popular than ever, and people are playing it like crazy.
Yeah, we're not even at the peak of what Pokemon Go was in 2016, 2017. Like, we're still kind of on the lower trend on it, and still that much data is rolling in constantly. So I don't know. If I was Niantic, I would be doing exactly this, but I would also hope I would have a plan to work with the public on what this means and how it works, and be very educational about it and transparent. Hopefully they will.
All right, let's check out the mailbag.
Let's do it. This one comes from Gary, who wanted to ask his thoughts about our GDI discussion about Microsoft's announced Windows 365 Link PC. Gary writes, in the 70s, I worked for a DEC mainframe at an aerospace company, first submitting Fortran jobs on punch cards, later using a teletype or dumb terminal. In the 80s, PCs, then Macs, took over, but we still had a Unix server that we communicated on with dumb terminals or terminal emulators over an X.25 network. Then I worked at a different company that only used X-Terms when I was hired in 1995. Within 5 years, we were all working on Windows PCs, and the X-Terms were history. Gary says maybe this time centralized servers with dumb-ish terminals will take off, but I doubt it.
That's what everybody says, like, until it works, right? And I'm not saying this is the time it works, but all that history goes out the window when, Apple makes the iPad or whatever the thing is that bucks the trend. So we'll see. Maybe the Link is going to be that. Maybe it's not. It's a good history lesson, though, Gary. I appreciate that, man.
Funny you mention iPads. It's like, I remember a time when all of retail was like, we can't do these flat little tablets. This makes no sense. And then tablets made sense, and now that's all you see. So we just have to hit whatever that is.
Well, thanks to everybody who sends us feedback. Keep it coming. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. And thanks to you, Scott Johnson. I was about to say whether you're a tablet guy or not, but I know you are. Where can people find what you're up to lately?
Well, the best place to go today ended up having some really interesting stuff around gaming, and I am big on that. I love the gaming industry, and I have a show on Thursdays called Core. We record it every Thursday afternoon, and it is all the big machinations of the business as well as the stuff we play, the things we're into, the trends. We got a lot of stuff coming up, including Game Awards and other things to talk about. So if you are interested in any of that at all, check out the Core podcast, which you can find at frogpants.com/core.
Excellent. For everybody who watches our live stream, you get a fun treat because Eileen Rivera and I are recording Apple Vision Show today, November 20th, live, but we'll also have it for you as a podcast. If you haven't checked us out yet, we talk about if Apple's vision matches what we want as users. And boy, do I have a story about my Mac Mini. You do not want to miss this one. And I'm saving it for the show. I will not talk about it anywhere else but that show. Get subscribed now at applevisionshow.com.
Patrons, stick around for the extended show. Good Day Internet, Casio, and Timex have been making watches you can wear on your finger. Yes, I said finger.
You can catch our show live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2100 UTC, and you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow with Justin Robert Young joining us. Hope to see you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.